I would honestly advise people who are not publishing a lot of vertical video to just stop doing Instagram and Facebook and stuff, because you're not going to grow. And so there needs to be a bigger question at the marketing level, is like, well, do we need to be on this channel, and what does it mean?
You're listening to the Keep Optimizing podcast to increase your traffic, improve your conversion rates, and grow your profits.
Hello and welcome. I'm Chloe Thomas, the host of this e-commerce marketing focused podcast. If you're not familiar with the format, well, we've changed it a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Every 5 episodes, we switch our focus to a different marketing method, like email or SEO or Facebook ads, and pick up the thread from the last time we covered it. And each episode, a new one released every Wednesday, I interview a different expert to explore the latest advice on making it work for you. At the moment, in this very episode, in fact, we are picking up the content marketing thread again. This is the first episode in this new 5-episode masterclass. And now we're going to be giving every topic we cover a full 5 episodes. So no more calendar month stuff going on. Is it a 4-episode month or a 5-episode month? It was confusing me, so it must have been confusing some of you too. Instead, we're doing everything for a full 5 episodes. In this episode, we're kicking off content with, I guess, 2 of the hugest questions in content strategy right now. One, how do you make the most of your content, which is a content re-platforming or reusing strategy? How do you build one of those? And secondly, where does AI fit in it all? And we've got a brilliant guest who has huge amounts of knowledge in making this work in consumer-facing brands, coming up to tell us exactly how to do it. Make sure you listen to the end of this episode, because he's also going to be sharing some brilliant quickfire insider tips to help you maximize the performance of your content marketing, and I'll give you a few hints and ideas as well. Have you yet downloaded our ebook? To celebrate Keep Optimizing's sister show, eCommerce Master Plan, reaching episode 500, yeah, it's been around that long, we've created an epic e-commerce success-focused ebook. It's packed with 500 top tips about how to make your e-commerce store more profitable. And I've personally organised the whole thing into sections, so you can dip in and dip out and take inspiration as and when you need it. This ebook needs to be sat on your desktop. Download your free copy right now at keepopt.com/ebook. Get 2024's most valuable e-commerce ebook now, keepopt.com/ebook. In this episode, I'm chatting with content marketing expert James Carson. James is a content strategy consultant with some super impressive consumer-facing experience, including head of SEO and social media at the Telegraph Media Group. That's a huge newspaper in the UK, for those of you not in the UK, and MD at History Hit. Right now, he's the founder of Publishing Strategy and has just launched the AI tools directory, NextGenTools.ai. Hello, James.
Hello, Chloe. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. How did you end up in content marketing?
Out of uni, I did English and history, so it's kind of like figuring out where I would put that kind of knowledge. I had vague aspirations to be a journalist, and then I got a job in SEO in Kent for Holiday Extras, which is quite a big travel brand now, as a copywriter, and it kind of opened up a whole new world, really, where you think, I didn't know anything about how Google worked or how SEO worked. I kind of went on from there, moved to London, joined Greenlight Digital, and then I had some success getting jobs at consumer brands. So Sega and Bauer Media was really where things started coming together in terms of audience management, combining the SEO with social media and in terms of content strategy.
And Bauer Media is huge magazine brands in the UK, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely bigger 10 years ago than it is now. But when I was there, I was on London Lifestyle, it was called. So I started on FHM, which was an interesting brand, definitely past its heyday by then. It doesn't really exist anymore. But it was still a massive website at the time, 3 million unique users a month, big revenues. Empire and Grazia was an interesting product to work on, space that I didn't know a whole much about. And then bringing a lot of learnings from earlier projects onto that and making it a success of that digital product. So it was quite diverse in terms of things to do, and we were quite a lean team, like the central digital team. And social media had kind of come not out of nowhere, but it was kind of growing in power. And one of the interesting things about Bauer is FHM's demise happened while Lad Bible grew massively. And Lad Bible now employs more people than all the men's lifestyle magazines put together. So there's a kind of quite interesting lesson there in digital transformation and the power of social media, I think.
Yeah, it was a fascinating time, I would imagine. Like we had that whole, in the e-commerce space, we had the suddenly everybody wants to be online maneuver. And then in the publishing world, you must have been in there right at the time where everyone was going, oh God, print's going down, what do we do? And this whole new competitive arena opens up, which must have been, having been during that phase in e-commerce and learning so much, it must have been an amazing time to really grow your skill set and to learn and to break new ground.
Yeah, it's certainly turbulent. I could feel the turbulence at a big publisher like that. And I think the big transformational change that happened around 2010 was that basically the iPhone and smartphones kind of came of age and became quite ubiquitous. And that just made social media that much more accessible. And when it was that much more accessible, like more people were on there and more content was created, it just created a fundamental challenge for people who didn't quite get with that program. So yeah, as you can remember, like BuzzFeed and Upworthy and those sorts of viral publishers actually sprung up as a consequence of that period. And I think the other hand to that is that it became quite difficult to make money out of just having adverts on your site. Like you needed quite a diverse business. BuzzFeed and Upworthy were kind of taking a lot of traffic, even the Lad Bibles of the world, making huge amounts of traffic, but didn't really have a great system of monetization. And I think a lot of publishers have shifted much more towards subscription in the last few years, like certainly the Telegraph and the Guardian to a degree. So premium content, I still think, is in quite a good place. Ad-based lifestyle content is a tricky place to be in, I think.
Well, I could happily talk about that for the rest of this episode with you, but less relevant for well, maybe we could argue it is more relevant, but probably less relevant for the e-commerce marketers listening to us. So the evolution in content, especially online content, continues. And you sent in the brilliant pitch to talk about multi-platform content strategy and where AI fits into it, which we will definitely be getting into, because it's very much a case now that you can't just go, this is a blog, is a blog, is a blog, or this is a video, this is a video, this is a video. So multi-platform content strategy appeals to me as a topic, but how would you define it? Because I think it's something which could be extrapolated into erroneous areas. I don't know why I've got all wordy. Apologies, everybody. But James, what does multi-platform content strategy and a strategy mean for you?
It sounds like a word salad. Certainly, it's quite difficult to pronounce. So you did well there. But to me, it's thinking about when you create a piece of content, like where does it go, and how does that kind of how does it complement other platforms? So let's say you have a podcast and you record for 40 minutes, then you've got 5,000 words of information that you can transcribe using AI. And then how do you actually create articles from that? And how do you create video from that and turn that large bit of information into basically a kind of mini publishing strategy in itself? Because there's quite a lot of content that you can get from there. And there's quite a lot of tools that you can use now to make that happen.
Why should an e-commerce brand be going multi-platform with their content strategy? Why shouldn't they just be keeping it linear? What's the benefit?
So I think if you've got, say, an articles feed or website with any content on it at all, then you're going to be heavily reliant on search primarily. And as we know, search can be quite fickle in terms of its kind of algorithmic updates, but I also think it's in quite a serious inflection point at the minute. It's not going to happen overnight, but there's going to be quite substantial changes to Google search as a consequence of AI appearing. So it may not be as fail-safe as it once was. And I just think with digital attention now and where people are online, a lot of people are kind of quite glued to social media feeds and will check them first thing in the day, perhaps. So just being on your destination is probably not enough in isolation. So how do you take that content that you've created that you own and on an owned channel and get it onto an earned channel for the lowest cost possible, while having good quality? I think that's the key ingredient. It's quite hard to do. Even good publishers struggle with this concept, and they're creating this kind of content every day, hundreds of articles.
Sometimes I think of it as being helping the content breathe. Like you've created this big hero piece of content, be it a blog, be it an article, be it a video, be it a podcast, and then you could just put it out, or you could find all the ways to sweat it. So I don't know why these are all human terms, but anyway, to make it sweat into other forms of content to kind of to repurpose it, but then also to give it that opportunity to breathe. So the podcast might come out week 1, or the blog post might come out week 1 to make it more relevant to e-commerce. Then you might do the social media shares the following week. Then you might have turned it into a video for YouTube a week after that. So you can kind of get more bang for your buck, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's also, you can get second wins on content all the time. You know, if something is very timely, then it's best to try and publish everything at once and get a big hit on the day. You know, for something like related to the Oscars, right? For an e-commerce brand, fashion and the Oscars and the Met Gala is really important. You want to get those big hits all in once. But let's say that you're talking about something that's much more evergreen, like trend, long-term trends and classical style, then that sort of having a multi-platform content strategy will give stuff a second wind. You don't know if an influencer or someone with a large social following will see that content in the future and go, that looks cool, and reshare it. And when they do, lots of other people might share it. And you see that all the time. So I think it is quite important to remind people that you exist, and this piece of initial hero piece of content exists as well.
So if we've started producing videos about our products. Let's go down the video route because it gives us lots of options to go with repurposing and replatforming. So we started creating videos for our product. At what point do we work out how we should be replatforming it? Is it at the point where we go, right, what videos are we going to create? Is it at that point where we decide what we're actually going to invest in the original piece of content, that we extrapolate out what we're going to do with it? Or is it kind of like, brilliant, we've done an awesome episode about putting up a tent. Now we'll work out how to repurpose it. At what point in the planning journey and the creation journey do we embrace this part of the strategy?
Preferably from the start. I think in e-commerce specifically, there is some debate about, how much value a piece of video on a website that is there to explain a product can really be used for promotional purposes, right? So if you have a video that shows you that shows you the product of the tent, just how it works, there's not really that much life in that beyond where it sits on a website, which is fair enough. That's a good instructional video that informs a buying decision. But let's say that on the same shoot, you can then do an instructional video, then you're going to reduce your costs. So that's where it's quite important to think of, like, when we're going into a product-based shoot where we're going to review we're going to have demos of 30 odd products. How could we squeeze this into something a bit more long form and educational? Or how could this be translated into something that's vertical and a bit more snappy? And I don't know, I don't like the kind of, all social media needs to be like hilarious and entertaining, but something a bit more socialified, to use a slightly strange word. So it is from the off. I think when you're doing that sort of production planning, having the foresight to link up those future channels and their potential will just save you a lot of money, because you'll be able to do stuff on one shoot, which otherwise someone in social media team might have an idea in the future and you haven't got that content properly optimized for it. So that's one way of looking at it. Like, you don't have to use that product video, that initial informational video doesn't necessarily have to go onto social. It might do, but then at the same time, you probably could do a social shoot at the same time and save on your costs.
So let's build on that then, James. From what you were suggesting then, and let's keep with the tents. You do this day's shoot in a field where you show people how each individual tent works, and then you do something like a 5 top hacks for putting up your tent faster with some better pegs or different rigging or something, she says, struggling with the tent concept. And maybe you do a 5 things never to do, because that's always good on social, 5 putting up your tent fails. And you find the time to do that. So then you've taken the content you had to create for conversion purposes, but you've also created some more extrapolatable content at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's right. You've got that informational base, which is kind of, in a way, it's quite mundane. Here's the product, this is what it does. But then getting into more educational and possibly into more entertaining stuff, just lining that up on the same day. Now, it's quite hard to just like ad lib what the exact examples will be, because I think there is a creative process there where a producer, the person who is planning this and going to do the shoot, should talk to an expert about, what are the ways that we could talk about this tent that could apply to these different channels, right? And that, I think that's really important, because a producer might not necessarily have that knowledge, and creatively that's quite important. And of course, aligning it to things like audience data, keyword analysis, and things like that. One thing I will say on like social video is that it pays to go quite long on YouTube. I think that's a mistake I see quite a lot, in that a lot of people produce quite a lot of product content, which is relatively short. And then the extension of that, leads to about 3 minutes, how to put up something on. It's just not enough. Like YouTube just doesn't really work like that anymore. And YouTube's becoming increasingly like TV. So one big thing I will say is, like, if you are going to planning a YouTube video strategy, then you have to be above 10 minutes and ideally above 20. And so that is an investment in a documentary, essentially.
So that's the proper YouTube videos rather than the YouTube shorts, just for clarity for everyone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the 16:9 aspect ratio, which is still where the lion's share of promotion, I think it's the strongest area where YouTube is. Like the shorts area is kind of competitor to TikTok and Instagram.
Got it. Okay. So once we've decided what we're going to create, the extrapolation, the reformatting, do we base that on which channels we're planning to put it out via? Like if we know we're going to do, if we know we're big on TikTok, we'll make sure we create some vertical videos. If we know we've got a thriving blog or a good email newsletter with lots of words in it, we'll extrapolate it to text. Or is it more we look at the content and think of the best alternative formats and then find somewhere to put it? Which way round would you attack it?
A bit of both, I think. If you've got a strong presence on certain networks and it's working, then you kind of have to plan with that in mind. But also with a lot of this stuff, you've got to start somewhere. And, I can bet not every listener listening to this will have a large presence on every social network, right? And it's like, well, what does it mean to have a big TikTok audience for a particular brand is something, is a question before we create a lot of content. And I would honestly advise people who are not publishing a lot of vertical video to just stop doing Instagram and Facebook and stuff, because you're not going to grow. And so there needs to be a bigger question at the marketing level, is like, well, do we need to be on this channel and what does it mean?
Got you. Okay. Loving the extra tips we're getting here. They're brilliant. We're definitely not editing out any of them. So by this point, we've got some idea of what we're going to create. We've got some idea of where we're going to put it and the types of formats we want. You've already mentioned we could get AI to create a transcript of a video or an audio. Where else does AI play well in content marketing in general, I suppose, but more specifically in the reformatting piece? Where do you deploy AI for the biggest benefit?
Basically looked at the video production process, which is probably the most complex of the audio video text, and kind of looked at AI tools that can apply to each aspect of that, each step of that process. So, ChatGPT is a great enabler in assisting with idea creation, giving you basic facts. Make sure that it is fact checked before you actually use them. It's not that great at things like current information or stuff that's quite esoteric. You're getting into the specifics of an e-commerce product. It's probably not going to be great at that, but the stuff around it is very useful and creates a good efficiency, I think, versus even like researching on Google search. It's just faster. So that's a really, really useful place. Now, you can use it for writing. I would hazard against that and say AI-assisted writing is fine. But if you're starting to rely on that for things like product pages, maybe I think you still need to get deeper into the what is this content saying. But also on something like a blog, you need to have an author in front of that content, and that author needs to be happy with what is being published. And if it's primarily written by ChatGPT, then there's a kind of disconnect between that and authorship in general, which is an important part of Google's new guidelines. There's quite a few nuances on just ChatGPT itself and using it for content production. But I would say as a research text assistant, it's amazing. Now, into the audio side of things, like Descript is a great tool for transcribing podcasts and also like cleaning audio, right? Like there's a lot of issues. Yeah, it's quite hard to get a good technical setup to get good, clean audio. And an app like Descript can make that a bit easier with just some audio cleaning stuff. I don't find it that amazing. Like it pays to have a really good setup in the first place, but it can get you out of a hole if you've recorded something and it doesn't look ideal. Now, there's a couple of tools that I kind of quite like in a video space in terms of just being able to do things a bit quicker in terms of visualization and stuff like that. So Runway is a great AI tool in terms of its ability to remove backgrounds from videos like super quick, and you don't have to know things like After Effects. So all of these things put together can really optimize a process of writing, research, which basically most things need a bit of that. Even if it's just a call sheet, that is technically a bit of research for audio or video. Cleaning up audio and slightly optimizing stuff. So it's much easier, I think, with AI to do stuff that was just hard like 2 years ago. So like not doing a green screen for a video and not having a green screen behind you was basically impossible before these AI tools came out. And that creates a massive, it's quite a game changer really, because that means any presented video like me in my bedroom can now be me on my beach and it would look quite good. So these sorts of things just make it a lot easier to create great looking or great sounding stuff.
So we use, to kind of try and summarize that, which I know is nigh on impossible, James, but let's give it a go. It's basically, don't rely on AI to create everything for you, but it can be hugely useful in saving a huge amount of time and making things look, feel, sound better.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. There are some things where you could use it to, as your content itself. I think 11 Labs is a really good voiceover application where it's got two really cool aspects to it. So the first is that you can get a library of voices to speak as voiceover. So that's quite useful in a video production. You can use AI voiceover. You should label that if you're going to publish it though. So that creates a slight problem. You can also clone your voice, which is like incredibly useful. Like it sounds kind of weird and people are kind of quite weirded out by this concept of digital twinning at the minute, but I think it's just going to be really normalized. So if you have a voiceover that's consistent in your company, like someone does the voiceover all the time or the podcast, then there's going to be fluffs in what they say. And sometimes you have to re-record and stuff like that. Like this voice cloning just makes a massive difference in like stripping that out.
I have to say, James, I am one of those people who's a little bit icked out at time of recording about twinning my voice and creating virtual Chloe, but I have a suspicion that by the end of this year, I will probably have done it because it seems to be one of those things you've just got to get comfortable with rather than it being a good or a bad idea. Are there any other tools, because I'm loving these tools you're giving us, is there another tool that's really, really cool for content repurposing you would recommend?
I mean, if we're going to go on the digital twinning side of things, then Synthesia and HeyGen are quite interesting just to have a look at. I think this kind of digital twinning will become quite ubiquitous. There'll be the people who get with it and just do it. Probably the people who are on the cusp of AI using it quite a lot at the minute are getting quite serious about this. I've definitely done it and shared it social. I would say there's pretty close parity to it being myself and people commenting like, I didn't know this was AI generated, right? And so when you're at that point, it's like, well, who cares? Why wouldn't you basically make your digital twin do the hard work? And I think that runs out for all sorts of presentation in e-commerce. I think one of the best examples of why digital twins are really cost effective is in like corporate training. And that's why Synthesia, that was the reasons for existing. If you've got a Tesco demo, a health and safety demo that needs to be spoken in 100 languages, because that's, they're all over the world, then using an avatar in a Tesco uniform, talking in all those different languages is by far the most efficient method possible. So if you have a big website and you need product presented and things like that, using an avatar or a digital twin is actually really, really handy, I think.
Love those pieces of advice. Now, you mentioned a couple of things that got my brain tingling, which was about the importance of authorship on Google and also the need to tag to make it clear when we've used like the 11 Labs voiceover people. Are those two things tied together? And whether they are or whether they aren't, can you tell us a bit more about the Google authorships thing? Because I'm sure that would have got a few of you out there listening right now going, what's Google authorship?
Well, I think what's quite clear is that AI is just going to create an explosion of content, right? So it's going to be far easier to produce stuff. Like, there's talk of being able to produce Hollywood films in 2 or 3 years from your bedroom, that sort of chat. And with the pace it's going, it's not impossible. So that kind of democratizes what was quite a difficult process before. And now anyone can publish. That creates like a huge ocean times 10 of what we have now. And how do you stand out in a kind of essentially an AI generated content web? And it's like, well, human authorship is going to remain really important. Like, there's no question about it. Like, the trend in punditry and opinion has been going on in media for quite a long time. Like, the objective facts of news are commoditized. So the important bit of a newspaper or the Guardian and the Telegraph, the homepage is full of writers with opinions based on objective facts and timely reporting, etc. And I think, if you're not thinking about how you can put a human touch into your content, and possibly also, getting influencers to write for you, that sort of thing, having authority write for you, then you're going to struggle because everything is going to be anonymized. You can get ChatGPT to write a web page for you. And so who's actually what's the insight or value around this page? And this is kind of just quite fundamental to how Google's worked for a couple of years, like in the EEAT guidelines, right? There's just quite a lot of information on, is this page, does it look like it's written by a human? Is this person an authority? That sort of stuff. And that's a key component of the algorithm. Now, on the flip side, people will probably are quite averse, I think, to knowing that a piece of content has been created by AI. If you put up a video and freely admitted that all of it was created by AI, then I think the general public would kind of quite weirded out by that at the moment. And companies have to be very careful this year because of the amazing amount of elections that happen in the Western world, of which the grand finale is soon to happen. And thus Meta have created AI labels, and YouTube do the same. And it's like, if you're creating content with something that's kind of quite fake, or synthetic, then you should admit that. And you're going to be algorithmically potentially damaged if you don't. So that doesn't count for stuff like just generating an AI image or something like that. But it's like, if it's written and then taught or set and then said by a machine, then you probably won't have the greatest amount of insight that you can, but also you have to label it, which is going to be algorithmically tricky, I think.
Indeed. Well, look, James, it's been brilliant going into multi-platform content strategy with you. Listeners, remember to stay tuned right to the end so you don't miss out on James's insider tips on content marketing and my suggestions for more free resources to help you improve things even further in your business. Have you yet downloaded our ebook? To celebrate Keep Optimizing's sister show, eCommerce Master Plan, reaching episode 500, it's been around that long, we've created an epic e-commerce success-focused ebook. It's packed with 500 top tips about how to make your e-commerce store more profitable. And I've personally organised the whole thing into sections so you can dip in and dip out and take inspiration as and when you need it. This ebook needs to be sat on your desktop. Download your free copy right now at keepopt.com/ebook. Get 2024's most valuable e-commerce ebook now, keepopt.com/ebook. Okay, James, so far we've gone deep into multi-platform content strategies. Now you get to us with your insider knowledge about the whole of content marketing. So for the following questions, your answer can be anything to do with content marketing, which of course does include everything we've already been talking about. James, are you ready for this?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's start with newbie advice. If we've inspired someone to take their first step, what do they need to know to give themselves the best chance of success?
I would say if you're early in your career, like having a good social media presence is becoming increasingly important. Just shows you're active, and it shows you kind of get the changing face of what content is. If I had a young person or someone with little experience applying for a job, and they had a large social media presence and they kind of knew what they were doing and well presented and a good following, then they were like, the preferences in hiring them is so much bigger than someone with no profile whatsoever. And it's just a great way to experiment. So I would start there.
Brilliant. And then if you've started, of course, you've got to keep optimizing. So what's your favorite way to improve performance?
Just the typical one is to test out a lot of stuff, right? So you got to get started. Over a 30-day period, you've got to publish 30 things. And you can do that on as many networks as you can. But let's say you're going to publish something every day. At the end of that 30 days, you're going to have enough data to understand what people have engaged with. And then from that point, you just keep doubling down on what appears to work until you get a very clear tone of voice. You found your voice. That's the way to put it. Your start is always going to be an element of experimentation, and then you found your voice. Big media brands like the Telegraph, for instance, have been in existence for 150 years. They've obviously found their voice, but other people just starting out, they need to experiment to start with.
I love that, thinking about it as a way of finding your voice, not just about that's what the audience wants to hear. That makes it so much more personal. I
think you've got to have a proposition as well. Like it's quite easy to be quite scattergun and think, well, I'm just doing this for the likes, right? But actually having a solid proposition on something like LinkedIn is going to get you more engagement. People are going to understand what your account's about and what they can expect, which I think is just becoming increasingly important in social media. Like stuff is getting ultra niche. Like you can get a really big following by being super, super niche. So it's really worth thinking about like how can you zone in. Even something like content strategy is quite broad. I think you're going into elements of that like journalism, SEO, social media, perhaps a little bit easier.
Very cool. If someone listening wants to learn more, is there a cheap or free resource you would recommend?
Well, for generative AI tools, just launched a website called NextGenTools.ai. So head there. We've got 4,000 AI tools in our directory and quite a lot of editorial that will help you select like the best tools for your project. So that's definitely one from me that I would like to pitch.
I think it would have been weird if you hadn't mentioned that, because I think probably the biggest shift anyone can make in their content strategy right now is starting to become a bit more efficient with it all. Because if you become more efficient, you've got the time to do the strategic thinking process, haven't you? So love that. Really glad you mentioned that then. Finally, crystal ball time. What's coming up in the next 6 to 12 months that we should be getting ready for?
The content production is generative video is just such a big force. It's already kind of there. You can create video on Runway, and it takes a bit of skill to pull it off and making it look good. Commercially, I don't think it's ready. You can't really take that video and use it like commercially yet. OpenAI made a big splash with their kind of teaser of Sora like really early in the year, and it's still not being released, right? So when that is released, the game will change in terms of like being able to generate video, which I think is just a massive step. I don't think it's quite as big a step as people kind of think is that big a deal, right? Because there are stock libraries with millions of clips. If I want footage of an airplane, I can easily find that. I don't need generative AI to do it. But for things like animation, like creating a Pixar film or like an ad, it's going to be a game changer. And I think that on top of the video side of things, like voice cloning, cleaning, that sort of stuff, audio creation, it's just going to get a lot better to the point where there's going to be parity between an AI clone of your voice and your voice. Like, at the minute, that's just a question of how much material you feed something like 11 Labs. But that's been a kind of quite long-term thing. For the last 2 years, people are like, it's not quite ready yet, but we're kind of already there in creating clones of yourself. So I think that'll become much more normalized in the next 2 years.
Love those pieces. Lots to get us thinking about there. James, we're very nearly at the end of the show, so could you please let the listeners know where they can find you and your business?
So the first point of call would be to go to publishingstrategy.co.uk, where you can find all of my services from website building to social media to blogging, SEO strategy, kind of bringing that all together from owned and earned media. So that's publishingstrategy.co.uk. Also a partner in a publishing venture called ABC Media, which is where NextGenTools.ai was launched from that venture. So check that out. That's a directory of generative AI tools that can help your business grow.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. It's been brilliant having you on the show and picking your brains and learning from you. So thank you so much for coming on the Keep Optimizing podcast.
Thanks very much, Chloe. It's a pleasure to be here.
What I love about a content repurposing strategy and replatforming strategy is you're getting more bites out of the same thing. You go to the effort to create that big hero piece of content, whether it's written, whether it's audio, whether it's graphical, or whether it's video. And then you find ways to use it in other places. Cut down versions, longer versions, rewritten versions, reviews of it. So many different ways you can reuse that content to get the maximum bang for your buck. And I agree with James. I think the way AI is delivering now in the content space is not in the necessarily the creation of the content, because there's so much more content you've got to do quality, therefore you need to have created it yourself, but then in the repurposing and the editing and the perfecting of it. So much that was a nightmare but 6 months ago is so easy now if you find the right tool. You can get links to all the things we discussed, including the full transcript of this episode, created by AI, important notes not created by AI, and more at keepoptimizing.com. You can also use our special direct to episode short links. Just put keepopt.com/the number of this episode into the URL bar and you'll be redirected straight to the correct page on the website. When you get to the website, you can also add yourself to our email list because we share loads of other cool things there too. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Keep Optimizing podcast. If you've enjoyed this one and want to continue learning about content marketing right now, then scroll back up your feed to episodes 181 to 184, because last December we did a full 4 episodes on content marketing, each one covering a different aspect of making it work for your store, including AI and SEO, and we went deep into how to use AI at which part of your blog creation strategy. We also did behavioural nudges, social commerce and UGC. So quite a selection there to get your teeth into. You can also find all our content marketing content via the short link keepopt.com/content. And please do tell your fellow marketers about the show, because I want to help as many marketers as possible to improve the performance of their e-commerce marketing. Have a great week and make sure you listen to the next episode so I can help you to keep optimizing your marketing.
Access everything Keep Optimizing at keepoptimizing.com. That's with an S, not a Z.
It's time to download the 500 top tips to make your e-commerce business more profitable ebook. Go to keepopt.com/ebook now.